They are significant for our company, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate them. There's a lot of things that are still unclear, and that's why we suspended guidance.
So Ford is suspending guidance, which basically means that they won't be releasing financial projections. They're not releasing any of that. So things are so unpredictable because of the tariffs that Ford won't be releasing any kind of financial projections.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Ashley Bishop with Status Coup News. The Trump tariffs are here to stay for at least the next 3 years, says Ford CEO Jim Farley. And Trump says if you are struggling during that time, you are just going to have to learn to deal with less. So CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, was on the Squawk Box on CNBC to talk about the tariffs and his company's expectations for the future. So let's listen.
Let's get to Phil LeBeau. He joins us with a special guest. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Joe, let's bring in Jim Farley, CEO of the Ford Motor Company, joining us from the company's headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. Jim, thanks for being here. I'm curious, Q1, you beat on the top and the bottom line, but you had a big drop in net profits. But it's the guidance that everybody's focused on. You are expecting an impact of $1.5 billion because of tariffs. This year, you've suspended your guidance. Do you expect these tariffs to be in place permanently?
We do, at least for the next 3 years. So we think it's, a significant issue for the company.
So at least 3 years. That's what they're expecting for the tariffs. So long enough to really screw over the American public, but also not long enough to actually bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Because bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. requires building facilities, filling them with workers or robots and AI, which seems far more likely than actually employing people. They would need to acquire raw materials to make things with, and so many other things that I would expect cannot actually be done in 3 years. And if the tariff timeline is indeed that short, it doesn't really incentivize big companies to make any drastic changes to their manufacturing, i.e. bringing jobs back here. Though it's long enough to really hurt those small businesses that probably can't weather 3 years of higher prices for raw materials and for manufacturing. Though again, 3 years is definitely long enough to really, really hurt working people. So we are just getting the worst of all worlds here. So I'm going to play some more of this video. I'm just going to skip ahead just a little bit.
They are significant for our company, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate them. There's a lot of things that are still unclear, and that's why we suspended guidance.
So Ford is suspending guidance, which basically means that they won't be releasing financial projections for the next quarter, the next fiscal year, however long. So things, again, like expected earnings and revenue, that kind of stuff. They're not releasing any of that. So things are so unpredictable because of the tariffs that Ford won't be releasing any kind of financial projections. And Ford is not the only company to also announce this. So Barbie maker Mattel pulls forecasts to hike U.S. prices as tariffs raise costs. So Barbie maker Mattel withdrew its annual financial targets on Monday and said it would increase prices for some products in the United States as Trump administration's sweeping tariffs bump up input costs for the toy maker. Given the volatile macroeconomic environment and evolving U.S. tariff landscape, it is difficult to predict consumer spending and Mattel's U.S. sales in the remainder of the year and holiday season, it says, which basically means like they don't know how many people are going to be able to actually afford to buy Barbies and whatever other toys during this upcoming holiday season. The U.S. represents about half of Mattel's global toy sales, and the company imports about 20% of its goods sold in the country from China. Mattel said it would reduce imports into the U.S. from China below 15% by 2026. The U.S. and China have hiked tariffs on each other's goods to more than 100% since U.S. President Donald Trump took office earlier this year in a full-on trade war between the world's two biggest economies that has upended global supply chains. There's no question that tariffs are creating disruption for the industry. Many companies have stopped production and shipping to the US as a result of the tariffs from China. We do support the Toy Association's advocacy for zero tariffs on toys, Mattel's CEO told Reuters. The company will also make changes to its supply chain to reduce China-sourced product in the US. For instance, it was ramping up production of the Uno card game in India to serve the US market and was increasing flow from China towards international customers. Just really quick, India is not the US. I thought the entire point of this was to bring manufacturing back to the US. The US is not in India, so I don't see how any of this is actually helping workers here, again, as this was presented to us. Apart from China, Mattel imports products such as Barbie dolls and Hot Wheels toys from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, which were also hit by reciprocal tariffs from the Trump administration in early April before being paused for 90 days. So less Barbies for kids, I guess. And Trump is just okay with this. He says that you guys should expect less and stop complaining. So this next article is from the Washington Post. From prosperity to austerity, Trump's tone shifts ahead of tariff impacts. Trump has long promised to unleash a golden age. Now he is warning that Americans may have to cut back. During his campaign in the early part of his current presidency, President Donald Trump promised an economic boom that would take off upon his return to the White House, reviving the American dream and producing 4 years of unparalleled prosperity. But Trump's tone and that of his aides has shifted notably in recent weeks as they warn of sacrifice and transition until, by their telling, his heavy tariffs paved the way for a boom. Trump has spoken of the need to take economic medicine, warned Americans they may need to cut back on items like dolls and pencils, and suggested a short-term recession may be an acceptable cost for the prosperity he predicts will come. This is a transition period, Trump said on Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press. I think we're going to do fantastically. Regarding consumers, he added, I'm just saying they don't need to have 30 dolls. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5. First of all, the idea that Americans need to take economic medicine is so draconian. And as far as, this being an acceptable cost for the prosperity he predicts will come, when is it going to come? I suspect they're going to keep moving the goalposts into infinity because this prosperity doesn't seem to be coming around anytime soon for most of us. So back to dolls and pencils. So toys for children and like school supplies. I understand that this is following news of Mattel increasing prices, as a result of the tariffs. That's why this is being mentioned. But the framing here, again, talking about children's toys and pencils, is intentional. It's designed to make it seem like anyone who's worried right now is whining about frivolities. And when pressed by a reporter for comment on his comments about dolls and pencils, our president had this to say.
Maybe they just all I'm saying is that a young lady, a 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, a 15-year-old girl doesn't need $37. She can be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
So stupid questions. That's what all of this amounts to for him. A stupid question about whether or not kids in this country are going to have the things that they're accustomed to having. And also, I don't think that most kids in this country have like 37 dolls. And yes, people are accustomed to buying these cheap plastic goods, including things like Barbies for their kids, and telling an American that those items like toys for their children are no longer something that's going to be available or something that they're going to be just totally priced out of is going to be a really hard sell for a lot of people. Just imagine Biden telling, the public in the most prosperous, wealthy country in the history of the world, well, you're no longer going to be able to buy Barbies for your kids, but you're just going to have to suck it up. That would not go over well, I don't think. And I kind of thought that that's what we were doing all of this for, right? We're wagering the continued habitability of the entire planet that we live on and most people's material well-being so that we can buy cheap shit from overseas. That was the promise. And now we can't even have that. So I don't know what any of this is actually for anymore. And further to that, the mouthpiece that this message is coming from, I mean, the optics of this could not be any worse. The billionaires are telling you and your family to just make do with less, like you already were. But where are their sacrifices? Their kids are going to continue having every opportunity, material and otherwise. They will not be lacking in Barbies or pencils or anything else, but yours will. And in the second Gilded Age, your kids will have less so that they can have everything. And the capitalists are telling you in this moment, like just to put a pin on this, to be less materialistic, to be more mindful of your consumption, to take a lesson from Buddhism. You don't really need all of those things anyway. Okay, fine, sure. I don't have an issue with that unless the person telling me that is a billionaire. Just this morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says, actually, we are in a position to win. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said during a CNBC interview on Tuesday morning, which I'm not going to play for you guys because it is rather long, on Tuesday morning that the U.S. is in a position to win a trade war against China, and their decision to escalate and retaliate against American tariffs is a big mistake. They're playing with a pair of twos, Bessent said during an interview on CNBC Squawk Box. What do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us? We export 1/5 of them, 1/5 to them of what they export to us, so that is a losing hand for them. I think you are going to see some very large companies with large trade deficits come forward very quickly, Bessent said. If they come to the table with solid proposals, I think we can end up with some good deals. If we put up a tariff wall, the ultimate goal would be to bring jobs back to the US. So the ultimate goal, not something that's going to happen in the near future. But in the meantime, we will be collecting substantial tariffs, again, which essentially amounts to a tax on the American people. If we're successful, tariffs would be a melting ice cube in a way because you're taking in the revenues as the manufacturing facilities are built in the US, and there should be some level of symmetry between the taxes we begin taking in with the new industry from the payroll taxes as the tariffs decline. I don't know what time period these people think that they're living in, but it's not 2025. It is not the current time period. We might import more from China than they do from us, but we are completely reliant on all of those things that we import from them, judging by the current state of everything. So I don't know what point he's trying to make there. I don't think that we are winning. It certainly doesn't feel to me like we are winning. And 2/3 of Americans certainly must not feel like we are on the brink of victory based on a new poll from the Washington Post, which says 2/3 of Americans disapprove of the tariffs. Most Americans disapprove of Trump on tariffs. Nearly 2 out of 3 Americans disapprove of President Donald Trump's handling of tariffs, a rebuke of the administration's flagship economic policy, according to a new poll. Overall, 64% of Americans disapprove of the president's efforts to raise import taxes, compared with 34% who approve, according to the poll conducted over the past week. The findings show that tariffs are one of the least popular issues so far in Trump's presidency. So setting aside dolls and pencils, this isn't really about how many Barbies you can buy for your kids. First and foremost, working people are worried about food and everyday household items and cars and laptops, things that people need to actually work and do their jobs. I'm pretty sure that working people are actually more worried about this and seeing the last vestiges of the American dream of a decent life being ripped away from them by the ruthlessness of the billionaire class, while being told to shut up and stop complaining about it. Because the billionaires are going to be just fine. And whatever happens to the rest of us in the meantime is a sacrifice that they are all willing to make. So thank you for watching. We will stay on this story, and you can help us to do that by becoming a paid member of Status Coup, and you can join us over at statuscoup.com/join. I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.